Every business and industry has been impacted this year by dramatic disruption. Organizations everywhere are seeing changes in enterprise data, stresses to their analytics infrastructure, and even huge impact on their business models. How should investments in analytics change to meet these challenges? We're going to turn to some of our customers for an answer to this question. Joining us next are Faye Henris, the VP of Business Analytics at TEOCO, Mitch Kwiatkowski, Vice President of Enterprise Data Hub, Enterprise Analytics at Highmark Health, and Steve Emmerich, the Chief Architect at ACI Worldwide. Justin, over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. Really happy to be here and really excited about our industry panel today. We have 3 guests, each of them experts in their respective industries, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their take on this subject. So why don't we get straight into the questions? My first question, or the first topic, is basically I'm going to ask each of you to describe how data is used as a strategic asset within your respective organization. And please feel free to tell us a little bit about your organization as well, so we can kind of get the context about how data is used there. Why don't we go ahead and start in alphabetical order with respect to last name. So Steve, let's start with you.
Hello, I'm Steve Emmerich. I work for ACI Worldwide, a payments software provider and solutions provider to banks and merchants and intermediaries. And ACI has about 5,000 clients spread across everything from fraud to wire payments to online banking to ATM driving and point of sale driving and every form of electronic payment imaginable. Virtually every one of those segments of our marketplace utilizes large-scale reporting for various purposes. In particular, the one that uses analytics for strategic purposes is our merchant retail market, which encompasses e-commerce payments, point of sale, and merchant retail fraud detection. And the analytics and reporting, particularly analytics, is both real-time and near real-time. Real-time is strategically used to detect real-time payment fraud. So when one swipes one's credit card at a store or online and there's any suspicion of fraud, it's frequently our products that are detecting that based on patterns of usage, based on neural network models, based on rules, based on a whole variety of techniques, all of which revolve around real-time analytics. In addition, post-payment analysis of the data across not only an individual merchant, but across all merchants using the data in syndicated form can yield a tremendous amount of insight about fraud patterns nationwide, because fraudsters frequently engage in fraud patterns consistently across merchants or in, according to certain properties of the endpoint at which the fraud is committed. And these are characteristic of the way we use analytics. We also use it for packaged insights. We use it for customized exports to customers, syndicated exports to data partners, and solution optimization of various kinds within payment engines. So in summary, it's all about the data.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. So Faye, please tell us about TEOCO.
Sure. Hi, Faye Henris. I'm with Teoko Corporation. TEOCO's been around for about 25 years, and our client base is almost exclusively the telecommunications operators. We started in North America, but we've got a worldwide reach right now. And if you think about that client base, our clients, our telecommunications operators, are the enablers of and at the center of our data-driven digital universe. 20 years ago, when I first got into this game, we did analytics on the data that was derived by the operator networks, and those were largely or analog data points. And the analytics associated with them was more about aggregation and some pattern detection and some predictions. But the data, the way the data comes in, the way the volume of data, the way it's grown, and what types of data have changed dramatically, over that time span. We're now looking at things like video and telemedicine and smart cities and autonomous vehicles and drone traffic, and how we work with that and how we manage it is what really drives our analytics use cases. If you think about the growth in telecom, we're expecting to see double growth every 2 years on the network traffic. And that alone for the last 10 years translates into a 50-fold increase. So from a TEOCO perspective, our analytic use cases are through the lens of our customers and what we provide to them. And that's them having a need to understand what's going across their network, across several different business functions or silos. So from a network perspective, what's traveling the network? What is the anticipated expected demand? Where are the growth patterns going to be coming from? How do I build that out? How do I plan to meet the demand? And how do I optimize what I have? From a marketing perspective, our analytics for the carriers are around customer retention, attracting new customers, and then caring for those customers once they're there, understanding what their experience looks like from both a quality and a quantity standpoint, and being able to meet that demand. And from a financial perspective, we provide analytics around the core cost of the network, what it costs to maintain, what it costs to build, what future expenditures might look like, all flexing around demand that we have some visibility to, but is largely dependent on technology and innovation that, while we have a handle on what we think is coming, it's been changing at light speed, so it's hard to predict.
Interesting. So Mitch, please tell us about data at Highmark Health.
Sure, thank you. My name is Mitch Kwiatkowski. I'm with Highmark Health, which is the second largest integrated and delivery financing system in the country. And what that means is we have a number of healthcare arms within the organization. From a healthcare insurer, we're a Blue Cross Blue Shield affiliate. We have a hospital and physician network, Allegheny Health Network, in Western Pennsylvania. We have United Concordia providing dental insurance across the country. We also have some other businesses like a technology and service provider organization with customers who are other health plans, other Blues. We also have a stop loss coverage insurance company and home health, post-acute, and so on. So it's a large, complex organization. So you can imagine that when it comes to data and analytics, there are a lot of different use cases that hit each organization. In particular, on the clinical side, it's easy to look at things like predicting infections, predicting hospitalizations. How do we reduce emergency room visits? On the health insurer side, we look at things like how do we lower costs and which members or subscribers are most at risk, and we try to work collaboratively then with physicians and getting patients and members the care that they need proactively and engaging them. And some of the other areas then is, as we try to combine the data, and that becomes where we see some of the more interesting use cases of being such a large organization with and being unique in a lot of ways in that we've got the clinical side and the health plan side. How do we take the best of what we've got in those, and for patients who are also Highmark members, how do we impact them even more? How do we take that? How do we build a 360-degree view of a person to really truly understand more about them, fill gaps with outside data from other organizations, continue to build on the models that we've got. As was mentioned before, we're exploring a lot of, I'd say, more novel things. Healthcare typically has been a little bit behind in some of the analytics that are out there, at least the technologies and adoption of some of the more advanced things. But I think it's very quickly catching up, and in some spaces jumping ahead. So we look at things like images, radiology, video, audio, genomics is starting to become a big thing that we're exploring right now. So a lot of it's trying to get ahead and really try to provide what's best in healthcare. We typically look at the triple aim: better care, better clinical care, lower costs, and better patient experience. So generally, we're trying to attack those three things.
So in all three of your industries, clearly data is not only extremely prevalent, but extremely strategic. Could each of you talk a little bit about what the specific challenges might be within your industries? I think you've kind of touched on each of them in your respective introductions, but maybe talk a little bit about, how your industries are challenged by extreme data requirements, as it were. And Steve, why don't we go back and start with you on that one?
Well, payments are growing in number and in volume across the world. As emerging countries grow their middle classes and grow their electronic payment economies and move from cash economies, the number of payments grows considerably. The size of those payments in such countries by American standards are small, yet the number grows, and processing each payment still requires system resources and human attention. So one of the challenges is driving the cost of payment processing down while not compromising on the security of those payments or the convenience of those payments. Because the whole point of adoption of electronic payments is to reduce commerce friction and facilitate efficiency in an economy and convenience. So one of the big challenges that we face is to accommodate both growth and the cost per transaction being driven down. And we do that by adopting more economical and higher capacity technologies for that processing. Cloud native technologies, database technologies that have more throughput and better response time and don't cost as much per unit of work. And other techniques for essentially improving the non-functional qualities of our product lines. Availability is critical as well, because people simply, merchants and banks simply will not purchase our products unless they do not go down. And in fact, we have banks who have never had an outage in more than 10 years with our products. And that's accomplished through active-active replication technologies and a highly redundant application software tier as well. So these are mission-critical applications. Maintaining the high quality of these non-functional characteristics in economies where the number of payments per unit time is burgeoning and their value is small is a challenge, not only for us, but for our customers, because in many cases, the institutions are sort of mandated by governments to adopt electronic payments in emerging markets. So we're very pleased to be able to try to tackle these challenges. The technical staff, both ones that I lead and others throughout the engineering organization, are very challenged by these opportunities.
Faye, same question for you, for telco.
Yeah, sure. So without question, the largest challenge for the operators is the explosive growth of data and the demand on the network. And some of that demand is, again, foreseeable, but much of it's not. It's coming from outside players that are creating their own ecosystems that then put demands on the existing network infrastructure that the carriers don't always have visibility to. If you break down kind of the requirements then for an analytics or for a challenge around analytics, they come into two main categories for my clients. And that's, the business functions or the business need and the technology need. From a business need, there's a requirement to have answers faster. There's requirements to be more nimble. There's requirements to do more with less existing infrastructure. There's requirements around providing financial reporting and visibility to investors and to Wall Street at a speed with which they never had to do before. From a technology standpoint, we're seeing, again, introduction of different types of technology, both as users of the existing network infrastructure, so devices and applications, as well as the introduction of machine learning and AI to those applications, and then the technology itself. So we're looking right now as an industry at a worldwide rollout of 5G technology or fifth generation technology. And that's being driven in large part by the need for these applications to be able to access the network with increasing speed and with very little tolerance for latency. And when you talk about things like smart cities and to a greater extent telemedicine or autonomous vehicles or drone, latency is not tolerable at all. So the quality of the network needs to improve. The only way to get that quality improvement is through technology deployments, but you still have to be true to your bottom line profitability and be able to do those functions and analytics, not necessarily on the fly, but pretty close.
And Mitch, over to you for that question.
Yeah, I think probably I'd say three big challenges. There are a number, but I'd say three of the biggest. One is complexity of data. In healthcare, a lot of the data is unstructured, so we have to figure out how to take large amounts of unstructured data and get derive insights out of that and make it useful. That's one piece. I think the second piece is what I'll call the liquidity of the data and freeing the data up from different systems. So there are a lot of proprietary systems, electronic health records that different organizations have. It's not always easy to get the data out of those, or when you do, getting beyond just the technical interoperability and getting into semantic interoperability. So if data moves from one system to another, does that system really understand it? Are we using the same code sets and ontologies to mean the same things? And then the third is healthcare, like a number of organizations, we're regulated. In some cases, more heavily regulated than other areas. So privacy of data is very important. I think things when we look at GDPR and CCPA and other privacy laws, I think that impact probably everyone on the panel. Those are things that we have to constantly look at as well and make sure that we're protecting the data, making sure that access is appropriate, even when it comes to data scientists and analysts who are looking at the data. But again, going back, we've got to get that data first and make it useful and then be able to put that in the hands of the people who are going to make the most of it.
Interesting. I'm hearing a lot of common threads there. So for a slightly different spin on this issue, as you all know, we're all living in a time of unprecedented change and disruption. I like to say that data-driven organizations of all kinds are seeing patterns in data that they've never seen before, and they're all being challenged to adjust their businesses to account for those changes. How are, in your respective companies and industries, and this might hold for your organizations as well as your own customers, how are priorities in data analytics changing as a result of these disruptions? Do you feel like certain goals are becoming more important? Other goals are being deprioritized? Are new goals emerging? Give us your take on that issue. Steve, let's start with you again.
Well, the changes we're experiencing due to COVID have had a dramatic impact on patterns in payment processing. Electronic commerce has skyrocketed and in-person purchasing has weakened. The growth of electronic payments as a consequence is accelerated as well, since all e-commerce is essentially electronic. That has definitely highlighted the need not only for handling the increasing volumes of data associated with electronic payments, but also for consolidating data across the channels with which payments are performed. So one can, one is people in the data business are always concerned with sort of omni-channel analysis of data. But I would say that the current events are accelerating the adoption of an omni-channel perspective. Just the nature of the insights that are possible and trying to predict what will happen has become a lot less predictable just as a function of historical experience and intuition, and the need for near real-time visibility into how those trends are changing as populations' expectations regarding how much can they socialize in stores and purchase in stores changes. So I would say that there is a rationalization that takes place at times of social change around business matters that we're experiencing with respect to the focus on the importance of data capture, data integration, data analytics, and real-time information reporting to many, many stakeholders, both on the business side and within our core organization, and also on the part of our customers.
Faye, are you seeing similar trends in the telco industry with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our customers have seen some use cases vastly accelerated. If you think about the fact that they are serving a workforce or a client base that is now a home-based workforce, as opposed to geographically centered around metropolitan areas or retail areas. And that's put a significant strain on the demand and where demand is coming from in the network geographically. These are scenarios that not only were they not anticipated, they weren't even modeled. So while the expansion was certainly something that was scoped, the way that it's being scaled and scoped and where those points of creation are and how it needs to scale had not been. So that's a completely new use case. While also, holding in the back of our mind that we do hope at some point to get back to a level of normal. But what does that normal look like? Is it really the workforce we had before? Is it really the office buildings we had before? Whatever it is, there will be some difference and some shifts over the coming timeline that make it very important to have upward and downward scalability and flexibility into whatever network planning gets put in place now. There have been some new use cases too. So how do you track, how do you monitor service quality? How do you monitor home-based connectivity for a workforce that's shifted seismically? Other impacts, which are really not analytics driven, but more my industry driven from a use case perspective, which is going to be interesting, is the fact that our current situation has delayed in some instances the rollout of 5G deployments that had already been put on way, not just in North America, but worldwide, which is going to allow other entrants and other innovators a little bit of breathing room to either catch up in that race or start coming up with new technology that's going to be hitting our networks when we get back to something resembling a normal.
So Mitch, I have to think this question is probably maybe even most relevant of all for you. What's your take?
Yeah, I think the pandemic did a couple of things. I think one is it put a spotlight on the challenges that we had in healthcare around data. As I mentioned before, making data liquid and being able to move.
Let's stop real quick and go back to before the phone call, before the phone is ringing, and we'll just pick it up with you asking that question again, Justin. We'll put Faye on there, and you can just say, Mitch, tell me what that's for you.
Okay, so I can just start with my question. Okay, all right. So Mitch, this question has to be particularly relevant for your industry. What's your take?
Yeah, for sure. I think what the pandemic has done for us is it's a couple things. One is it's shined a spotlight on the challenges that I mentioned before about being able to make the data liquid, being able to move the data. As we've, everybody reacted to COVID-19, trying to get a hold of data to do the best they could to try to do predictions of what the future was going to look like, to forecast as best as possible. But it was a challenge to get the data. What it did internally for us is it validated the direction that we were already looking to go. And if anything, it gave it more credence than maybe it had earlier, and more support for data and analytics than we were getting. And we've always been a very data informed, data decisive sort of organization. But as we've looked at trying to really broaden our data strategy across the enterprise, it has its challenges, again, because of the complexity of our enterprise. This has definitely made it, put it front and center. And now you start to add new use cases such as virtual health and the ability to see your physician face to face, remotely. A lot of people are turning towards that. That was something that didn't, the healthcare industry has been trying to do for a while, and it's finally started to take off. So being able to get that data moving quickly, available, when people need it, has become, that much more important. So it's definitely helped with that. And again, I think we're going to start to see probably a lot more data moving in alignment. There have been some federal regulations that have come up over the last year or so from the government to force interoperability between healthcare organizations, and I think this is, it's just everything's aligning really well for us. So again, as long as that data is useful, I think it's gonna be a huge benefit for analytics and healthcare.
Great. So let's pivot to solutions for a moment. Your companies are all Yellowbrick customers, and I want to thank you for that profusely. Maybe could each of you talk a little bit about how Yellowbrick's capabilities are going to help you address some of the challenges you mentioned? It could be whether it's an industry challenge or one of the ones you just mentioned in the most recent round. Steve, why don't we start with you on that one?
Very interesting question, because we came around to Yellowbrick sort of like Churchill's remark that Americans always do the right thing after they tried everything else. We needed a scalable solution for huge volumes of data with the opportunity to support a wide variety of use cases, data science related, risk analytics related, interactive reporting related, batch, real time, a huge variety of use cases for which many big data technology solutions work well for one or more of those use cases, but not all. And so far, we have not found a use case for which Yellowbrick is not well suited. And the roadmap that's been shared with us suggests that that Yellowbrick's leadership is aligned with the thought process that I just described. So not to be overly laudatory, but I came from the supercomputing industry before I entered the commercial activities I'm involved with now. And to my way of thinking, the way Yellowbrick has addressed all the challenges that we've been discussing up to now is as close to, even though it's a closed system in some sense at the present time with respect to both hardware and software, they've come as close to trying to utilize patterns of supercomputing as applied to data capture and analytics as the best example of that as I've seen over the course of a fairly long career in high performance computing. So I guess the key elements that have helped us is the wide variety of use cases that it helps with, the very simple expandability of the product, the very simple administration of the product, and truthfully, the ability to take on new problems and new data sets in a very, very rapid fashion. Once we had the basic understanding of how to align the capabilities of Yellowbrick to the general use cases that we started with. So the learning curve has been very rapid, and the adoption curve has been incredibly rapid without any serious impediments. And so I would say that from an analytics reporting perspective, the challenges of organizations like like those represented in this discussion probably are well met by the type of approach that Yellowbrick is adopting, and hopefully will continue to be. There is a universal law in computer architecture articulated by a gentleman named Gordon Bell a long time ago, that there's sort of a cycle of reincarnation of computer information technology to support business needs, and towards centralization, then to decentralization, then to centralization again over time. And I think Yellowbrick has hit it right on the nose in terms of being able to facilitate hybrid cloud architecture, while at the same time being able to concentrate so much parallel computing energy around analytic requirements, which are growing in both data volume and complexity.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you for that detailed answer. Faye, how about you?
I honestly think you should quit while you're ahead. I don't think I can give a better answer than Steve just did. But I will tell you that TEOCO is proud to have serial number 1 of the Yellowbrick appliance, and it is the enabling component of our Smart Hub solution. And since we've come over to using Yellowbrick, we are able to deliver more for our clients, more value at faster speeds. We're able to ingest additional data sources that we weren't able to take on before, either because of complexity or size, or the speed with which we were going to be able to process this. And we were able to do that without really changing the economics associated with those engagements. So our perception, our clients' perception of us is that we're continuing to do more, we're doing it better, we're doing it faster, and we're enabling them to be nimble and responsive in the marketplace the way that they need to be. So we are big fans, and we're really glad we made the switch.
Thank you. Mitch, how about you?
Well, I guess there's not much more I can say that they haven't already, but I would add that one of the things that it's helped with, and I don't know that we thought about this early on, but it's helping with the data sprawl that we've had. We have a lot of, I don't want to call them shadow data teams or shadow IT, but we've got teams they're building data sets, and they're not necessarily putting them in the other appliances or the other data environments that we've had and we manage centrally. So they might sit in network shares, they might sit on laptops, desktops, they might sit in homegrown, database systems somewhere. The draw of the speed, the performance, the availability is starting to pull people in where they want to put their data there, which is great because we can't solve for the sprawl immediately. It's a pretty difficult thing to grasp and get a handle on. But rather than having to force people to move their data, they want to. So once they do that, now we can start to say, okay, well, are we duplicating things? Are there things that we should archive? We should no longer retain. Let's clean this stuff up. So that's definitely helped. And the model that we've taken in a lot of cases, one of our analytic platforms in particular is more of, I'd say, a co-op type model where we let people come in and co-develop the things that are there, the data products that are built, and then we've got a team that manages deployment, QA into production. We follow the same thing there, and again, we don't have a bottleneck with a single team managing all of that. So it's really helped us ensure that our processes are really, I'd say, efficient for that type of an appliance. But again, it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't performant and as fast as it is for the data needs that we've got.
Oh, that's great to hear. Appreciate that. And I do have one final question, and this can be a fairly brief answer from each of you. because we've covered a lot of ground here today. But in your respective industries, what would you think, or what would you call the next major challenge for data analytics? And again, you can just pick one example if you'd like, because there might be several challenges. Steve, why don't we go back to you on that?
Well, it's an interesting question. There's been a secular trend towards commodity hardware being applied to every problem, and being very reluctant to adopt proprietary hardware and software. So this is represented by two trends: the adoption of Linux, I would say, over mainframes and proprietary Unix systems. And the economics have been compelling for doing that, and the competencies have arrived within the consuming organizations. And at the same time, the adoption of open source software across the industry has also kind of freed people from the clutches of proprietariness that has hindered their advancement over time. And I think in analytics, the trend has been evident in the open source solutions that have been made available. And yet what we're seeing now is we're seeing the advent of a number of vendors, not such as Yellowbrick, but also ones that exist primarily in the public cloud infrastructure, that are offering extraordinary capabilities in the field of analytics. And so I think, there's a tension there, that for adopting organizations such as ACI Worldwide, how to balance the need for avoidance of, sort of the proprietary trap, while at the same time embracing the truly distinctive capabilities of these extremely accomplished vendor organizations. And how we navigate that over time is going to be very interesting. And I think this tension between centralized and distributed, cloud versus on-premise, all of these challenges that we face as organizations, because the data needs to remain extraordinarily secure, particularly in regulated industries, and how we manage that in the context of this, desire to avoid having to worry about managing and paying for data center infrastructure versus wanting to leverage public infrastructure is also going to enter into the equation. So that's how I would summarize the longer term concerns.
Faye, what's your take for TEOCO?
It'd be hard to narrow it down to one. We've got a couple. Obviously, the advent of 5G is going to bring with it a whole new wave of capabilities that are going to require analytic solutions to understand their impact. Most particularly if we think about edge computing and what that involves. I talked about the higher speeds and the lower latencies that are going to be demanded by the users and the applications of that technology. So understanding that we don't have a full handle on what those new technologies are going to be and what the use cases are going to be, but still preparing to be able to ingest the real-time use and activity and provide back actionable insights, at point and at scale to the carriers. That's probably our largest challenge, followed shortly behind by blockchain technology, which is being adopted pretty early and pretty largely by the telecommunications industry, everything from smart contract and ordering all the way to billings and collections.
And Mitch, the last word is yours.
I think for healthcare, data is going to become easier to get a hold of. We're starting to look at more novel data sources, or spending more focus on things like social determinants, things like housing quality, food insecurity. I think data is going to become more readily available. The challenge I see is not going to be technical. I think it's going to be, it's really going to be more in the space of ethical use. I think when we talk about ethical AI, ethical analytics, ethical data science, whatever we want to call it, I think that's going to be the big challenge to really focus on and say, well, you've got access to this data. You can do this, but should you do it? Making sure that we're not introducing bias and we're using the right data for the right reasons. I think that's going to be a big challenge, and that's something that we're going to have the discipline to really focus on and make sure that we address and get ahead of before it gets out of control too quickly.
Interesting. Well, that's a perfect conclusion to our panel, I think. I want to thank each and every one of you for participating. I really appreciate it, and thank you to attendees for watching. Jeff, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
I had one thought. I don't know what everyone's schedule is like. I don't know if there was, because we didn't have any time for any crosstalk. If anybody had a question for anybody else in the industry, we could have a little bit of bonus content.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should come up with something. I have one. So we're a transaction processing company by, it's in our DNA to be that. And so the switch to focusing on data and analytics has created has created a lot of excitement on the part of data management professionals within the company. Do you, each of you, have lines of business that are not exclusively about analytics? Although I guess the telecom business is that you're in is pretty intensively about analytics, but I'm curious whether the staff have responded to this increased demands on data and analytics and the increasing volumes and all the challenges that Yellowbrick helps to meet as an exciting professional opportunity.
That's a question for Faye, yes?
It's a question for both of you, whether it's what has been the response of your employees to the opportunities presented by recent, the COVID crisis, but more than that, just the secular change towards data being very important to the line of business that you're in.
So you said earlier, Steve, telecom, really everything we do is centered around data points and measuring and monitoring and predicting. So that's analytics is our core. If you look at our tagline, it's analytics, assurance, and optimization, and both assurance and optimization require analytics. So that's in our DNA. But I will say with the introduction of Yellowbrick, some of the things that we've been trying to do for years, or that we've been doing, the analogy of the duck gliding on the water, but the legs are going like crazy underneath. The legs have been able to slow down a little bit. We're able to deliver more. We're able to deliver it faster. Which has enabled us to be more creative and more engaged with our clients for different use cases that we just didn't have time, bandwidth, or budget to get to before.
Yeah, and I think for us, obviously analytics, data science, that's got the glitz and the glam, and everybody wants to be a data scientist. But I think we've been able to jump into a lot of newer approaches to doing things with data. Everybody wants the data, and what also then happens is you've got data science building models, and there's output of that, and that output is data. So we need to take that and put that back into our business operations, into other systems, and make that kind of mobile and move that around. So it's given the teams, I think, a lot of energy and a lot of drive, and we're starting to look at things like the cloud. We've been in the cloud, but looking at it more seriously, I think, and that opens up a whole new world of technologies as well. Getting something like Yellowbrick was really exciting for everybody. We've got people that have been mired in the older data technologies for years, if not decades, and something like this was just really out there for them, and but they've gotten exposure to it, they've gotten experience with it, and they're excited, and they realize, there's a lot more out there that we can do. And again, in order to meet the needs of within healthcare, we're going to have to do those things. And definitely exciting. It's definitely created a lot more opportunities and created some great career paths for the teams. As
business intelligence, or the demands on business intelligence, aspects of analytics solutions grown in your organizations? They certainly have in mine. As a result of the increased complexity and volume of information that's available, just the presentation aspects have been quite challenging. Do others agree?
I would agree. I think one of the challenges, and this has been a challenge for a while, is when do you push self-service? When do you teach people how to fish? Because there's a supply-demand challenge that we have. We've got a number of visualization tools or BI tools. Whether people know how to use them effectively and do the right visualization techniques is a different story, but that's not died down at all. I think, to your point, it's probably increased. The more people have access to data, you're still going to need those descriptive analytics and be able to understand what's happening today and be able to put things and present them in meaningful ways. So it's definitely increased. And again, there's, it lets us focus on what are the right ways or best practices of doing some of these things.
And I would say that the processing speed with which we're able to achieve now using the Yellowbrick appliance underneath our solution has made us less concerned or less worried about putting it into the hands of the users to build and create their own queries, because a failed response or a very long delayed response with bad data coming back would have been a reflection on us before. It's still a reflection on our solution, but it happens so quickly that we can troubleshoot it and fix it quickly and get the right answers or the right methodology into the hands of the users to be able to be self-sufficient, which is it's a great success story within our client base.
Yeah. I echo that.
That's excellent. That's going to help a lot.
You're good at questions, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think that's cool. I wanted to see you guys interact a little bit, just like, organically with what, learning about each other and your different businesses and stuff. So we got everything we need for.
Welcome to Yellowbrick, the only modern data warehouse for hybrid cloud. 100 times faster performance, thousands of concurrent users, and petabytes of data. Get faster, richer, more accurate insights, all while saving millions in costs. Yellowbrick gives you the power to make the right decisions, the ones that vault your business ahead of the competition, now and in the future. Schedule a demo at yellowbrick.com.